She was fired for kindness, then hired by someone unexpected. The words sliced through the stale, recycled air of the break room, sharper than any blade, colder than any winter wind that ever whipped through the city streets. "You're fired, Elara. Effective immediately, for kindness." Elara Thorne felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin a ghostly white, a stark contrast to the vibrant blush that usually colored her cheeks. The cheap plastic chair beneath her suddenly felt like a block of ice, sending a shiver through her entire body, a tremor that started in her spine and radiated outwards, seizing her muscles. Fired for kindness. The sheer, breathtaking absurdity of it was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole the air from her lungs, leaving her gasping in disbelief, her mind struggling desperately to process the impossible contradiction. How could the very essence of her being, the quality she valued most, the very core of her moral compass, be the cause of her undoing? Mr. Harrison, her manager, stood across the small, cluttered table, a stack of disciplinary forms clutched in his hand like a weapon, his face a mask of impassive, almost robotic professionalism, his eyes devoid of any warmth, any flicker of human understanding. They were like chips of polished granite, reflecting the harsh overhead light, but revealing nothing, utterly devoid of empathy. He might as well have been reading from a corporate manual, his voice a monotone devoid of inflection, each word a cold, calculated pronouncement, a final, unappealable judgment. This wasn't just a job loss. This was a condemnation of her very nature, a direct assault on the core of who she was, a rejection of her soul. And in that moment, as the chilling reality settled over her, as the weight of his words pressed down, crushing her spirit, Elara felt a profound, terrifying fear. Had her most cherished quality, her deeply ingrained empathy, her unwavering belief in human goodness, just become her greatest downfall? Was the world truly so cold, so transactional, so utterly devoid of warmth, that compassion was not merely a weakness, but a liability, a fatal flaw in the relentless pursuit of profit? The question hung in the air, a suffocating shroud, threatening to extinguish the last flicker of hope within her, leaving her adrift in a sea of cynicism. Elara had always been a quiet rebel in the bustling, cutthroat world of retail. For 5 long grinding years, she'd worked at Trendsetter, a sprawling, impersonal department store that valued profit margins above all else. A veritable temple to consumerism, where every interaction was meticulously calculated for maximum return. Every smile a potential sales opportunity. Every customer a number on a spreadsheet. Its fluorescent lights hummed with a cold, sterile efficiency, casting a harsh, unforgiving glow on racks of mass-produced clothing and aisles of glittering, disposable trinkets, making everything feel artificial and transient, devoid of genuine connection. The air was thick with a faint, cloying scent of new fabrics, cheap perfume, and a pervasive, unspoken desperation. The desperation of sales targets looming like insurmountable mountains, of commissions that barely covered rent, of a constant, unspoken pressure to push, to upsell, to maximize every single transaction, regardless of the customer's actual need or desire. Elara, however, moved through it all with a gentle grace, a quiet warmth that seemed utterly out of place, like a wild flower blooming stubbornly in a concrete jungle, an anomaly in a sea of hardened pragmatism. Her colleagues, hardened by years of demanding customers, unforgiving quotas, and the relentless pressure to perform, often called her soft, a derogatory whisper behind her back, a label meant to imply weakness, a lack of the necessary ruthlessness. Mr. Harrison, a man whose soul seemed to have been replaced by a spreadsheet, whose heart beat to the rhythm of quarterly reports and profit-loss statements, simply called her inefficient, a polite dismissal of her human approach, a coded criticism of her inability to prioritize numbers over people, of her tendency to linger, and connect. But Elara couldn't help it. She saw people, not just transactions. She saw the tired mother struggling with a screaming toddler, her patience worn thin, her eyes pleading for a moment of understanding. A brief reprieve from the chaos of public judgment. She saw the nervous teenager trying on their first interview outfit, their future hanging in the balance, their confidence fragile as spun glass, needing a word of encouragement. She saw the lonely elderly person simply looking for a moment of connection, a kind word in a sea of indifference, a brief acknowledgement of their existence, a reminder that they matter. Her kindness wasn't a calculated tactic, a means to an end, a strategy to boost sales. It was an instinct, a fundamental, undeniable part of who she was, as natural and essential as breathing. It was a beacon, small but steady, in the cold, transactional landscape of Trendsetter, a quiet defiance against its corporate ethos, a silent protest against the dehumanizing nature of her job, a refusal to let the system harden her heart. The day it happened had started like any other Tuesday, a relentless tide of endless tasks, each one blending into the next in a monotonous rhythm that threatened to lull her spirit into submission, to drain her of all vitality. The morning rush had been particularly brutal, a chaotic whirlwind of demanding customers and overflowing registers, leaving Elara's feet aching with a dull, persistent throb that radiated up her calves and into her lower back, and her spirit a little frayed, stretched thin, like an old piece of fabric about to tear under the slightest strain. She was meticulously restocking a shelf of overpriced, garish scarves, her mind already drifting to the next chore, counting down the minutes until her shift ended, dreaming of a quiet evening when she saw her. An elderly woman, frail and stooped, her shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible burden of years and worries, standing hesitantly by the bright. Her coat, though clean, was thin and worn, its fabric almost translucent with age, offering little protection against the chill of the air conditioning, a stark testament to a life of modest means. And her hands, gnarled with age and arthritis, trembled slightly as they clutched a small, threadbare purse as if it contained her entire world, her last vestiges of dignity, security, a lifeline she dared not loosen. Her eyes, a watery blue, darted around the overwhelming, brightly lit array of plastic and glitter, a profound confusion etched on her face, like a lost child overwhelmed by a vast, unfamiliar landscape, struggling to make sense of the chaos. She looked utterly, completely lost, overwhelmed by the sheer volume and noise, a fragile figure in a bustling, indifferent world, a silent plea for help. Elara, despite the urgent, nagging voice of Mr. Harrison echoing in her mind. Time is money, Elara. Keep moving. Don't dawdle. Every second you stand still is profit lost. You're on the clock. Felt an immediate, undeniable pull, a magnetic force drawing her towards the woman. It was stronger than any corporate directive, more compelling than any fear of reprimand, a primal instinct that overrode all professional training. She approached slowly, carefully, her steps soft, almost noiseless, a gentle smile already on her face, a genuine warmth radiating from her, a silent invitation, a promise of safety. "Can I help you find something, ma'am?" she asked, her voice soft, empathetic, cutting through the stores, relentlessly cheerful. Piped-in pop music, a quiet island in a sea of manufactured cheer, a voice of genuine concern. The woman jumped, startled, her frail body trembling slightly. Then her eyes, clouded with anxiety and a hint of fear, focused on Elara, and a flicker of profound relief, a spark of hope, passed through them, illuminating her tired face, chasing away the shadows. "Oh dear. Yes, please," she whispered, her voice reedy and thin, barely audible above the store's din. A fragile thread of sound that seemed to break with each word. My granddaughter. It's her birthday tomorrow. She wants the Starlight Dreamer doll. It's all she talks about. She's been dreaming of it for months, drawing pictures of it, talking to it, her little heart set on it, but I can't seem to find it, and I don't have much time. Her voice was laced with a tremor of anxiety, a desperate plea, a quiet urgency that spoke of a promise that had to be kept, a child's happiness hanging in the balance. Elara knew the doll. It was one of the store's most popular and most expensive items, a glittery plastic fantasy that flew off the shelves as soon as it was stocked, a guaranteed bestseller. She also knew, with a sinking feeling that settled deep in her stomach, a familiar dread, that it was almost certainly out of stock, having seen the last one sold just yesterday, its box carried away by a triumphant parent, a final, fleeting glimpse of its departure. A quick, discreet check on her handheld inventory system confirmed her worst fear. 0 in stock. The digital display mocked her, a cold, impersonal confirmation of the woman's impending disappointment. Her heart sank, a heavy weight in her chest, a familiar disappointment. But this time, it was not for herself, but for the woman before her. She could have easily told the woman that, offered a polite apology, a practiced shrug, and moved on to her next task. Her duty fulfilled, her conscience clear by corporate standards. That was the trendsetter way, the efficient, emotionless protocol, the path of least resistance, the path that kept her job secure. But then she saw the raw desperation in the woman's eyes, the profound, unconditional love for her granddaughter radiating from her frail frame. The quiet shame of not being able to provide, of potentially shattering a child's dream, of failing a beloved grandchild. This wasn't just a toy, it was a child's dream. A grandmother's promise, a fragile moment of happiness, a bond to be strengthened, a memory to be made. The thought of that little girl's crestfallen face, and the grandmother's heartbroken, defeated expression was utterly unbearable, a pain that resonated deep within Elara's own empathetic heart, a pain she felt compelled to alleviate. "Let me just double-check in the back," Elara said, a sudden, reckless, almost audacious idea forming in her mind, a spark of defiance against the store's cold logic, a whisper of rebellion against the dehumanizing system. It was against every rule, every policy, every instinct for self-preservation she had learned at Trendsetter. A direct violation of her employment contract, a risk to her already precarious livelihood, a gamble with her future. But the image of that little girl's crestfallen face and the grandmother's impending heartbreak was a powerful motivator, overriding all caution, silencing the voice of fear. She slipped away, not to the stockroom, which she knew was empty of the doll, but to her own locker, tucked away in the employee break room, a small private sanctuary, a place where she kept her few personal belongings. She had saved up for weeks, putting aside small, precious amounts from her meager paycheck, denying herself small comforts, foregoing treats and small luxuries, carefully budgeting every penny to buy a Starlight Dreamer doll for her own niece, whose birthday was still months away. It was sitting in her locker, still in its pristine, glittery box, a small indulgence she had allowed herself, a future joy she had carefully planned, a symbol of her own small hopes. Now that joy was about to be redirected, its purpose transformed. She returned a few minutes later, the large, glittery box held carefully in her arms, a triumphant smile already on her face, a genuine warmth in her eyes that reached out to the anxious woman, a silent promise of good news. "Here it is," she said, her voice a little breathless from her hurried trip, a triumphant note in her tone, a hint of suppressed excitement, a quiet victory. "Looks like we found the very last one." tucked away in a forgotten corner, just waiting to be discovered, a lucky find. The woman's face lit up, a radiant, almost childlike joy transforming her features, chasing away the shadows of anxiety and worry, replacing them with pure, unadulterated delight. "Oh, bless you, dear. Bless you. You're an angel," she exclaimed, her voice filled with profound gratitude, a heartfelt outpouring of emotion, a blessing from the depths of her soul. "How much is it?" she asked, her gnarled fingers fumbling with her worn purse, pulling out a handful of crumpled bills and loose coins. Her movements slow and deliberate, her brow furrowed in concentration, counting out her precious funds. Elara scanned the doll, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a nervous anticipation building, a silent countdown to the moment of truth. The price flashed on the screen, $89.99. The woman carefully counted out her money, her lips moving silently, her face a mixture of hope and trepidation. It was $65. Elara's heart pounded even harder, a drumbeat of apprehension, a silent countdown. This was it, the moment of truth. She could tell the woman she was short. She could suggest a cheaper alternative, a different toy, something within her budget, a practical solution. Or she could do what felt profoundly right, what her heart demanded, what her empathy compelled her to do. Regardless of the consequences, regardless of the rules, regardless of her own needs. She glanced around, her eyes darting quickly, assessing the immediate environment, looking for any watchful eyes. The aisle was empty. Her colleagues were busy with other customers, their backs turned, engrossed in their own sales, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding. Mr. Harrison was nowhere in sight, likely holed up in his office, staring at spreadsheets, oblivious to the human drama unfolding on the sales floor, lost in his world of numbers. With a quick, almost imperceptible movement, a practiced sleight of hand born of years of discreetly helping customers, of making small, unauthorized adjustments to ensure a smile, Elara reached into her own pocket, pulling out a crisp $20 bill and a $5 bill. Her own hard-earned money she desperately needed for her own bills, for her own survival. She quickly, smoothly, added them to the woman's pile of cash, pushing them subtly towards the register, blending them seamlessly with the woman's own crumpled bills, making the transaction appear complete. "Looks like it's exactly enough," she said, her voice steady, calm, a small, innocent lie that felt like the most honest thing she had ever said. A truth of the heart overriding a truth of the ledger, a triumph of compassion over cold calculation. "Happy birthday to your granddaughter. I hope she loves it very, very much." The woman, too relieved, too overwhelmed with gratitude, too focused on the precious doll in her hands, didn't notice the sleight of hand, the quiet act of generosity that had just transpired, the personal sacrifice. She beamed, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears, her face radiating pure, unadulterated joy. A transformation that made Elara's sacrifice feel utterly worthwhile. A profound reward in itself. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Almost a prayer, a heartfelt blessing that resonated deep within Elara. "You've made an old woman and a little girl very, very happy. You have no idea what this means to us. You're truly a blessing." She took the doll, clutched it to her chest, as if it were the most precious treasure, a fragile dream made real, and with a final grateful nod, a lingering look of profound appreciation, she shuffled slowly out of the store, her steps lighter than when she entered, leaving behind a lingering sense of warmth and genuine joy. A quiet triumph that resonated in the air, a beautiful echo. Elara watched her go, a quiet satisfaction settling deep in her chest, a feeling of profound rightness that momentarily eclipsed her apprehension. It was a small act, a secret act, a rebellious act, a calculated risk, but it felt profoundly, undeniably right. She had broken a rule, yes, a cold corporate rule, a piece of impersonal policy. But she had mended a heart. She had preserved a child's dream. She had given a grandmother a moment of dignity and joy. She quickly tidied the display, her heart still thrumming with a mixture of triumph and apprehension, the adrenaline slowly subsiding, replaced by a lingering unease. She knew the risks. Trendsetter had a zero-tolerance policy for unauthorized discounts or personal payments, viewing them as theft from the company, a direct attack on their bottom line. But surely, for something like this, for an act of pure, selfless kindness, a gesture of human compassion, they wouldn't truly punish her, would they? Not for something so small, so innocent, so well-intentioned, so inherently good. She was wrong. So terribly, profoundly wrong. The corporate machine had no room for such nuances, no tolerance for deviations from its rigid protocols. The summons came an hour later, delivered by a grim-faced colleague who avoided her gaze, his eyes fixed on the floor, clearly uncomfortable with his task. A messenger of doom. "Elara, Mr. Harrison wants to see you in his office, immediately." The words, delivered with a chilling lack of emotion, sent a fresh wave of dread down her spine, a cold premonition that solidified into a sickening certainty. Her apprehension solidified into a cold, hard knot in her stomach, tightening with each step she took towards his office, each step feeling heavier than the last. She knew. Somehow he knew. The quiet triumph of her act of kindness evaporated, replaced by a suffocating fear, a sense of impending doom, a chilling realization that her world was about to collapse. Mr. Harrison's office was a sterile box, devoid of any personal touches, no photos, no trinkets, just functional cold furniture, a monument to efficiency. It was dominated by a large, imposing desk and a flickering computer screen displaying endless rows of cold, impersonal sales figures, a testament to his singular focus on profit. He didn't invite her to sit. He merely gestured to the screen, his hand a rigid, accusing blade, his face utterly impassive, a mask of judgment. "Care to explain this, Elara?" His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, more terrifying than any shout, a controlled, chilling monotone that spoke of absolute authority and unwavering judgment. A final verdict. The screen showed a grainy, zoomed-in image from the overhead security camera. It was a clear, undeniable shot of her, reaching into her pocket, pulling out the bills, adding the money to the woman's payment. The timestamp was visible, stark and unforgiving, a digital witness to her crime, an irrefutable piece of evidence. The transaction details were displayed beside it, showing the precise discrepancy, the exact amount she had covered. He had been watching, or someone had been watching for him, a silent, unseen eye, a sentinel of corporate policy, a spy in the aisles. Elara felt a wave of nausea, a sudden dizziness, her carefully constructed composure crumbling under the weight of the evidence, under the cold, unfeeling gaze of her manager. "Mr. Harrison, I can explain," she stammered, her voice pleading, desperate, trying to convey the human element he clearly couldn't grasp, the warmth he couldn't comprehend, the empathy that was alien to his world of numbers. The woman was short on funds. Her granddaughter really wanted that doll. It was her birthday. I couldn't let her leave disappointed. It was a small amount and I paid it myself. It wasn't a discount. It wasn't a discount. It wasn't a discount. It wasn't a gift from me to her to make a child happy. She tried to appeal to any shred of humanity he might possess, any flicker of understanding. He leaned forward, his eyes cold, hard chips of ice, reflecting the harsh fluorescent light, utterly unmoved by her plea, by her raw emotion. "Kindness, Elara, does not appear on a balance sheet. Kindness does not drive quarterly profits. Kindness does not adhere to company policy. You violated store policy. You manipulated a transaction. You used company resources, our point of sale system, for a personal, unauthorized act. This is gross misconduct. His voice rose slightly, but it remained controlled, chillingly so, a razor's edge of authority that cut through her defenses, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. We are a business, Elara, not a charity. Your actions are a liability, a financial liability, and a liability to our corporate structure. They set a dangerous precedent. You're fired, effective immediately. Gather your personal belongings and leave the premises. Security will escort you out. Do not return. Anintuni. How inissima. Elara stood there, numb, the words echoing in her ears, each one a hammer blow to her soul, crushing her spirit, leaving her hollowed out. Fired. For kindness. The injustice of it was a bitter taste in her mouth, a burning acid that seared her throat, a poison that threatened to consume her. She tried to speak, to argue, to defend herself, to articulate the moral imperative that had guided her, the simple human decency she had acted upon. But no words came. Her throat was tight, choked with unshed tears, her eyes stinging, blurring the sterile office into a watery mess, a distorted reflection of her shattered world. She was dismissed, not just from her job, but from her very sense of worth, her belief in the inherent goodness of the world, her place in society. She had believed in doing good, in compassion, in following her heart, and it had cost her everything. She walked out of that office, out of Trendsetter, her head held high despite the tremor in her hands, despite the profound emptiness in her stomach, despite the crushing weight of despair. But inside, her world was crumbling, reduced to dust, her future a terrifying blank, an endless void. The city outside, once a vibrant tapestry of possibility, now seemed a vast, indifferent concrete jungle, ready to swallow her whole, to consume her last vestiges of hope, to leave her utterly adrift, a forgotten speck in its relentless march. The weeks that followed were a blur of despair and mounting anxiety, a relentless, suffocating pressure that squeezed the air from her lungs, making each breath a struggle. Elara sent out countless resumes, meticulously tailoring cover letters for each application, trying to fit herself into the mold of what employers wanted, of what the corporate world demanded, attending endless, soul-crushing interviews where she felt like a commodity, a statistic, just another applicant in a long line, easily discarded. Each rejection, each polite but firm "we've decided to go with someone else," each ghosted application where her hopes were quietly extinguished, chipped away relentlessly at her confidence, eroding her self-esteem, reinforcing Mr. Harrison's brutal assessment. Kindness is a liability. Was it true? Was she fundamentally unsuited for the harsh, unforgiving realities of the working world? A world that seemed to value ruthless efficiency over human connection? Cold profit over warm empathy? Was her empathy a fatal flaw? A weakness she needed to suppress, to hide, to eradicate from her being? The bills piled up on her kitchen counter, stark, undeniable reminders of her precarious situation. Each envelope a fresh stab of fear, a new demand she couldn't meet, a threat to her very existence. Her meager savings dwindled to nothing, a rapidly shrinking lifeline, leaving her with a terrifying sense of vulnerability, a chilling awareness of her fragile position. She ate ramen noodles for dinner, rationed her bus fare, walking miles when she couldn't afford the ride, her feet aching, her body weary, and spent long, sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment, replaying the scene in Mr. Harrison's office, questioning every decision she had ever made, every act of kindness she had ever made, every act of kindness she had ever performed, wondering if she had been foolish to follow. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep into her heart, whispering that perhaps she was too soft, too naive, too foolish for this unforgiving world, a world that seemed to reward cynicism and self-interest, a world that had no place for her. The open loop of her future stretched before her, vast and terrifying, an endless empty expanse, filled only with uncertainty, with a chilling sense of dread. How would she survive? Would her core values, her very essence, truly be her undoing, leaving her destitute and alone, abandoned by the very compassion she offered to others? The tension built with each passing day, each unanswered phone call, each dwindling dollar, each hungry pang. One particularly bleak afternoon, after yet another disheartening interview that ended with a polite but firm rejection, leaving her feeling utterly defeated, her spirit crushed, Elara found herself wandering aimlessly through a quiet, tree-lined park. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the leaves themselves beginning to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. A beautiful, melancholic reminder of the changing seasons, of life's relentless cycle. She sat on a cold, unforgiving bench, its rough surface digging into her, watching children play on a distant playground, their laughter echoing like a cruel, mocking melody, a stark contrast to the silence of her own despair, a painful reminder of the simple joys she felt she had lost. A profound sense of loneliness settled over her like a heavy shroud, making her feel utterly invisible, a ghost in a vibrant, living world, a spectator to a happiness she could no longer access, a silent observer of a life she couldn't participate in. She pulled out her worn phone, its screen cracked, its battery dying, a symbol of her own fading hope, scrolling through job listings she'd already seen 100 times, each one feeling more futile than the last, each word a reminder of her predicament, a symbol of her failure, a testament to her inability to find a place. Suddenly a voice, warm and familiar, a voice that seemed to cut through the oppressive silence of her despair, a voice that felt like a forgotten melody, a whisper from a distant, happier past, sliced through her thoughts, jolting her back to the present. "Elara, is that really you?" She looked up, startled, her head snapping towards the sound, her heart leaping into her throat, a sudden, unexpected surge of adrenaline. Standing before her was the elderly woman from Trendsetter, the grandmother with the Starlight Dreamer doll. Her face, though still lined with age, was no longer etched with confusion or anxiety. Her eyes, bright and clear, held a profound warmth, a recognition that brought a flicker of hope to Elara's own, a spark in the encroaching darkness, a light in the gloom. Beside her stood a tall, distinguished man in a finely tailored suit, his arm gently linked through hers, a gesture of quiet affection, of deep respect, of familial bond. He looked to be in his early 60s, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes a piercing, intelligent blue, filled with a quiet intensity that seemed to see straight into her soul, to understand her unspoken pain. He exuded an aura of quiet power, of immense capability, of a man who commanded respect, but also a surprising gentleness, a warmth that belied his formidable presence, making him approachable despite his obvious wealth and authority. "Oh, ma'am," Elara stammered, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and surprise. She hadn't expected to ever see her again, let alone in this quiet park, so far from the store, so far from her old life, so far from the place of her humiliation. "Yes, it's me. How are you? I hope everything is well. It's so good to see you." "I'm wonderful, dear. Thanks to you," the woman said, her voice stronger, clearer, filled with a vibrant energy Elara didn't remember, a newfound vitality that seemed to radiate from her. She squeezed the arm of the man beside her, a loving gesture, a silent testament to their bond, to the joy Elara had brought them. "This is my son, Arthur. Arthur, this is the angel I told you about, the young woman who saved Lily's birthday, who brought so much joy into our lives, who gave us hope when we thought all was lost, who showed us true kindness." Arthur stepped forward, a warm, genuine smile on his face, his eyes crinkling at the corners, radiating sincerity and profound gratitude. He extended a hand, his grip firm and sincere, a handshake that conveyed respect, not pity, a handshake between equals, a silent acknowledgement of her true worth. "Elara, it's an honor to finally meet you. My mother has told me the story countless times, a cherished family legend, a tale of unexpected kindness that we often recount. You have no idea what that act of compassion, that simple gesture, meant to her and to my granddaughter. It was more than just a doll. It was a moment of profound human connection, a reminder that good people still exist." His eyes held a depth of gratitude that surprised Elara, a sincerity that cut through her cynicism, reaching the raw, vulnerable part of her heart, touching a chord she thought was broken. Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, a wave of awkwardness washing over her. "It was nothing, really," she mumbled, trying to downplay her actions, still uncomfortable with praise, with being the center of such intense gratitude, with the idea that her small act had such a profound impact. I wanted to help. It was the right thing to do. Anyone would have done it." "Nothing?" Arthur chuckled softly, a warm, rich sound that filled the air, a gentle contradiction, a knowing smile. "My mother came home that day, not just with the doll, but with a renewed faith in humanity, a belief that goodness still exists in the world, even in the most unexpected places, even in a large, impersonal department store. She was so touched, so moved by your selflessness, by your quiet act of compassion. She told me about the store, about the strict policy." Elara's heart sank, a familiar cold dread returning, a fresh wave of shame, a painful reminder of her humiliation. I was fired," she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. A raw confession, a painful truth she had tried to bury. "For that, for breaking policy. Mr. Harrison said kindness was a liability." The bitterness, long suppressed, seeped into her voice, a sharp edge of resentment, a deep wound reopened, still festering. Arthur's smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet intensity, his blue eyes hardening slightly, a flicker of anger passing through them, a silent acknowledgement of the injustice. He exchanged a significant glance with his mother, a silent communication passing between them, a shared understanding of the situation, a mutual indignation. "I see," he said, his voice thoughtful, a low rumble that commanded attention, a dangerous calm that suggested immense power held in check. "Well, Elara, I'm glad we found you today. My mother has been talking about you for months, insisting that I meet the woman who showed such remarkable character, such profound courage. She was convinced you were special, a rare gem in a world that often seems to value the opposite." He paused, his gaze unwavering, holding hers with a powerful stillness. A gaze that saw beyond her current circumstances, beyond her worn clothes, into her very soul. "You see, Elara, I own a company. A rather large one, actually, Nexus Innovations. We specialize in ethical technology solutions, developing cutting-edge software and hardware that aims to improve lives, not just generate profit. And our core philosophy is built on human-centric values. We believe that true innovation stems from..." Elara stared at him, her mind racing, struggling to reconcile the pieces of information, the overwhelming reality of his words. Nexus Innovations? She knew the name. It was a huge, globally recognized tech giant, a leader in its field, known not just for its groundbreaking products, but also for its progressive workplace culture, its commitment to social responsibility, its reputation for valuing its employees, for being a force for good in the world. It was a company she had only ever dreamed of working for, a place that seemed utterly out of her reach, a distant star in her bleak sky, an impossible aspiration, a fantasy. "My mother told me about your character, Elara," Arthur continued, his voice gaining a quiet power, a persuasive force that resonated with conviction, leaving no room for doubt. "She told me about your integrity, your compassion, your willingness to put another person's well-being above a company rule, above your own self-interest, above your own job security. And frankly, Elara, that's exactly the kind of person I've been looking for. We're launching a new division, a major, ambitious initiative focused on community engagement and ethical product development, ensuring our technology serves humanity's best interests, that it empowers, not exploits, that it connects, not divides. It requires someone with not just intelligence, with not just technical skill, but profound empathy. Someone who truly understands people, their struggles, their hopes, their needs, their dreams, not just data points or market trends. Someone with a heart, Elara. A heart like yours." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, minimalist business card crafted from thick, recycled paper, not for himself, but for a specific, powerful role, a role that would change her life irrevocably. "Elara," he said, his blue eyes holding hers with unwavering conviction, with an almost paternal warmth, a deep sense of trust and belief. "I'd like to offer you the position of Head of Community Relations at Nexus Innovations. It's a senior role with a substantial salary that will ensure your financial security, comprehensive benefits that will take care of you and your family, and the opportunity to truly make a difference on a global scale, to shape the future of ethical technology, to build a better world, to leave a lasting legacy. We don't see kindness as a liability, Elara. We see it as a great..." Elara stood there, stunned, the park fading around her, the sounds of children playing a distant, muffled hum, the world seeming to spin around her, then settle into a new, breathtaking alignment. Fired for kindness, dismissed and shamed by one company, cast aside as a liability, then offered a dream job, a position of profound influence, by the very person whose family she had helped, whose life she had touched, whose faith she had restored. It was too much, too sudden, too perfect. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief, of profound vindication, of a joy so intense it felt almost painful, a physical ache in her chest, a release of pent-up emotion. Her voice was a shaky whisper, barely audible, choked with emotion. "But why me? I'm just a retail worker. I don't have experience in tech or in community relations on that scale. I'm not qualified for something like this. I'm just Elara." "Because you are precisely what we need, Elara," Arthur replied, his voice gentle but firm, leaving no room for doubt, his conviction absolute. "You proved without knowing it that your values are unshakable. You acted with integrity when no one was watching, when there was no reward, only risk, only the quiet prompting of your conscience. You chose compassion over compliance, human connection over corporate policy, empathy over profit. That, Elara, is rare. That is leadership. That is the kind of character we build our company on." He smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes, radiating profound respect, a silent acknowledgement of her true worth, a recognition of her innate goodness. We believe that kindness, far from being a liability, is the most powerful currency in the world. It builds trust, it fosters loyalty, it inspires change, it creates a ripple effect of good that extends far beyond any balance sheet. And you, Elara, are rich beyond measure in that currency. You are the embodiment of our mission, the living proof of. Elara took the business card, her fingers trembling as she clutched it, the crisp paper feeling like a tangible piece of her new future. A future she had never dared to imagine. She had faced dismissal, despair, and crippling doubt, all because she chose to follow her heart, to listen to her inner voice of compassion, to prioritize humanity over cold, hard numbers. But in the end, that very choice, that quiet act of kindness, had led her to an unexpected destiny, proving that sometimes the greatest setbacks are merely detours on the path to something far greater, something more meaningful, something truly transformative. Her kindness, once deemed her downfall, her fatal flaw, had become her ultimate triumph, a testament to the quiet, transformative power of a compassionate heart in a world that desperately needed it. She would not just be working at Nexus Innovations. She would be embodying its very soul, its guiding light, proving that empathy could indeed drive innovation and change the world, one human connection at a time, one act of kindness after another. Her journey from the cold break room to the pinnacle of ethical innovation was a testament to the profound, unexpected rewards of choosing kindness, a story that would inspire millions.